guys, welcome to another episode here at ringspark.com. You know, we have a lot of people on here who are experts on different fields, and today is no exception to this. Today we have an author and a survivalist with us, someone who's taken a look at the world we live in and figured out what we need to do to be prepared for anything really, and how to survive it. Piero is a best-selling author, and he's got a lot of good insights on this. I look forward to diving into the conversation with him. And so, Piero, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Good. So, you have a bit of a story because you haven't been doing this your whole life. I mean, you started in a very different field than what you're working on now. So, would you like to share your story with us so that we know where you come from?
Sure. So, I've been living almost all my life in Switzerland. Although I'm Italian in origin, but I'm Swiss now. And for most of my 20s and 30s, I've been working in the software industry, mostly for American companies, but also having my own startups and generally developing emerging markets for these software industries across the world, especially Africa, Middle East, Eastern Europe, including Nordics as well, Nordic countries. And doing so pushed me to see what the world really looks like and how people are across the world, and loving history as well. All this led me to try to start to understand a little bit of the reality of the world beyond the media stories, and to see that we are in a world that has unfortunately converging catastrophes, I believe, and that goes from the overpopulation, the declining resources, natural resources, and especially for energy, the environmental destruction, and the finance setup of especially the Western globalized world that has become extremely fragile. And all this is converging to what I think is going to be economic collapse of portions that we have never seen. And we start to see the initial phases of that. And because I have a family, I have 4 kids, and I'm living in a country where we have this obsession since World War II to be extremely prepared in case of crises and emergencies. And all that led me to rethink the survivalist story that exists in the United States, and perhaps twist it in a way that can fit not just the survival of an individual, but also the survival of a group of people, but more importantly of a civilization. So that led me to change my life, my skill set, to develop new skills, new preparation. I stopped my job, and I now live in a farm, and I wrote my book, and it was very successful. Especially the first version went out in France. Now it's out in Russian, in Italian, and even in Arabic, in English, of course. And I wrote further books, and all that led me to completely change the way that I think people can be successful, which is not make money necessarily, which is not have this career, but also think about the future, think about civilization, think about one's family, and therefore how we can prepare for a better life.
So you think that people need to learn survival skills more, and we're not just talking about, gathering foods and stuff like that, but we're talking about actual skills that you have in order to survive extreme situations. So what kind of skills are you talking about? What are your focus skills?
Well, when people ask what is a survivalist, sometimes the media or the Hollywood has shown people who are dug into a bunker or in a log cabin with the gun and with stores of food, and they are waiting for the apocalypse. Now that's not what I think is the best approach, because long term we need not only to survive as an individual, but as I said, as a civilization. What is this civilization going to be? This is open. This is really an open question. But certainly we don't want to just be in a rat hole. We want to be living full and meaningful lives. So the skills that one needs, and I group these into categories in my book, but basically the idea is the goal we want to attain is to be as much independent and autonomous as possible, whether as as a unique individual, whether as families, whether as group of neighbors within a village, within an area of a town, or certainly as autonomous as possible in terms of countries or nations. Depends of the size that we are able to influence. And that requires autonomy and independence for, first of all, the physiological needs that we have. Water, clean, pure water is fundamental. And then, of course, local, seasonal food that is healthy and nutritious. And then comes health and the ability to medicate oneself as much as possible. And that's three of the seven skill sets, for example. And already on these three, you can think of all the skills that are linked to that. How do you gather water? How do you make sure that you have water in the place you live that is clean, filtered, pure? This already gives you some idea of many skill sets. Same for food. If you want to grow a little bit of your food, maybe not to be 100% self-sufficient, but maybe 20%, maybe 50%. Well, that requires to learn a little bit how you harvest, how you seed, how you grow, and how you harvest some food yourself. And this can be done in the city on your balcony. This can be done in the countryside. The Soviets survived the collapse of the Soviet Union, while the Russians into Russia, because it was cultural to have the little home garden. And this was a tradition, by the way, in Europe for centuries, that people, including factory workers, had the little gardens outside their houses or at even factories. In many cities, like in London, in Paris, in many countries, they had that because you were never sure of how the future was. Same for health and medicine. Today we are like robots. We go to the doctor, they give us a pill, and we hope the best. But that's not how we can master and be autonomous in managing our own health. And one can go on into more higher levels of needs, such as energy. We need energy is a luxury, hot shower, having electricity, managing our heating in our room, in our houses. All this is another level of skill set. And then comes, of course, culture and knowledge. And because we speak about civilization, what does a civilization mean? What is the cultural heritage that we need to nurture, that we need to transmit to future generations? Then comes defense. How do we defend ourselves against the risks and the dangers that the world comes? And it's not about, the zombie things. That there's nothing to do. It's really about how we become free. And a free person is someone who can bend itself and group with others, and this is what creates the links within people across, and that creates a bond, a cultural bond. It is the fact that we have a stake in something that is common, and we're willing to defend it. If we're not willing to defend what's common, it makes no sense. So that's another set of skills. And lastly is the group that goes with the social skills that enable us to work together. So I'm summarizing a lot of things, but certainly if one sees these 7 elements that I believe are what makes the whole set of going towards autonomy, well, then one can deduct all the skill sets of personal, of interaction with others, but also of trades and skills sets for jobs that are going to be useful forever. For example, if you're an electrician or a plumber, or a bicycle repair person, you will have a job in the future. If you're a banker or an insurance salesman, I'm not sure. So one has to think, or a lawyer, one has to think, what are the jobs and skill set that make you successful in today's world? And what are the skills and that can make you successful in the way that you can still do something and you can still provide for your family in a world that is more risky or more into crisis? And I believe we are going to that world. But even if we're not, even if we have oil forever, even if we have energy plentiful forever, which I don't believe, but let's assume we have, having enabled you to be autonomous, therefore to not need the government, the state, supply chains that are very complex, well, you have this feeling of owning yourself, not being a slave of a system, whatever the system is. And therefore, I believe your life becomes better, of better quality, because you are more fulfilled, because what you do every day is for you, of course, for your family and the people around you and the tribe in a way that you're constituting around you. And this is, of course, a process. It's not something you do or you can decide one day to another. You don't say, okay, today I'm a lawyer and tomorrow I have this label survivalist. This makes no sense. You really start a process of life change, and you don't necessarily have to do what I did, which is a complete switch to something else. You can still be a lawyer in one life, in the day, and take as a hobby the development of these new skills.
So, what are these skills, or where should the people who are watching this, who have never done anything like before, they've never thought about it, but they like the idea of feeling more autonomous, they like the idea of being able to take care of themselves, being independent, more independent from the world around them, or they just want to be prepared for whatever, or they just want skills that they can show off to their friends and say, this is a good thing. Where should they start? What's a good place to start this skill development?
Well, I always joke saying one good way to start is to try to imagine or ask, if there are people still have them, their grandparents, how they used to live when they were kids, or how they used to live when they were children. But certainly people until the 1950s, they were extremely aware of what it meant to be autonomous, what it meant to have everything you need to sustain a potential crisis, because there used to be food shortages, there used to be climate problems, there used to be bad winters, especially in the Nordic. When there was a long bad winter from October to May, well, that's a long time without food. So the people were used to store, prepare, and therefore having the skills that people can start, if only as a game with friends, and to say, well, let's go hiking in the woods. Not because hiking in the woods per se is important in the future. It will maybe, but that's not the hiking part that's important. The important is because you then realize what it means to not have the luxuries we are used to. In my book, I have a chapter in the end where I give 9 exercises that people can do on today, going out. For example, one exercise is to spend 24 hours outside in the city. A lot of people are used to imagining the city as this extremely performing system where you go from your house to your job and back, and eventually you go for entertainment once in a while. But people don't realize the reality of the life in the city. And if you stay, especially at night, or if you go into the bad neighborhoods of cities, you suddenly start to realize how people really live, what are the street skills that are important, and that we are usually way too naive in imagining how people deal with each other. And so that's a way, for example, it's one example out of many, to realize what are the skills in terms of social relationships that needs to be developed. For example, a skill that is interesting is the ability to say no. We are in a world where we are trained since kids to always say yes to stuff, and saying no in many people is something very difficult to do. And take 24 hours a day where every request you get, you say no, even including your wife. and that's an interesting exercise, for example, to learn one set of skills, which is at some point you need to be mentally tough, because we're not used to that anymore. And it's a small exercise that leads to, of course, much more deeper and clearly much more meaningful set of mental skills that one needs to learn. But it's a point of starting that I feel is one needs to always start to find what are the baby steps, the little things that can enable you to start.
So how do people know which, because a lot of people have a lot of different skills, and some people are nature people, they love going into the woods, and some people never been to the woods, but they know self-defense, or they know how to do stuff like that. Some may be farmers. Now, for a lot of people, they have a tendency, in my experience, to focus on what they're good at. And they go, well, I know this, so I'll be all right, or I know this, so I don't really need to learn all that other stuff. Why should we focus on spreading out knowledge instead of specializing in one thing? Should we be looking at learning a lot of things?
You're right. People tend to do and specialize in what they like. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing because human societies tend to be complex. And even without the super complex societies we're in today, specialization is an important element of human society. So specializing is important. However, first of all, it takes the risk that you may specialize into something that will eventually be not useful. So there's a risk of that. So I always say, well, sure, it's like, for example, lawyer, again, is extremely specialized. And however, we're not certain that in times of crisis or even in a different world, that specific law that one is specialized in might be the one that is needed. So one can start by deconstruct what is skilled here is skilled on. For example, a lawyer may be skilled into rhetoric, and rhetoric is always useful, and therefore he can sure keep his specialization into that ability to use words to achieve results in terms of convincing people. It may become useful for trading, for bartering, etc. But I always say to people, never underestimate the needs to have multiple skills into an horizontal set. You may not be a specialist, and certainly it's very hard to be a specialist into everything, but you need to know a little bit about a lot of things. Take, for example, mechanics. Who still knows how to repair a car? Including garage people don't know anymore. But certainly knowing how the basic functions of an engine and how it works, first of all, may avoid you to get screwed by a repair guy who will invoice you stuff that he has not done, especially women. Be careful of that. But this is an example where it is useful to have a basic knowledge about all things. Certainly, as again, I take these seven elements that people need to prepare for autonomy. Yes, there's a lot of things that can be shared. For example, in my case, I like gardening, but my wife is much better than I at gardening, so she tends to do a little bit more. I'm much more skilled into self-defense. I do martial arts, and I'm good. I train people to shoot with rifle and handguns, and she doesn't like firearms. So clearly, I'm more specialized into that. But certainly, I do teach her, and I do teach my kids a little bit at least. What else? For example, the solar panels I have on my farm, I have no knowledge how these things work. I have zero knowledge in electricity. So my next thing the next thing I need to do is, how do I repair the stuff if it fails? I have a heater that is a super bio green and zero consumption stuff for heating my house. I have no idea how it works. And when it breaks, I bring in the repair guy, and I want to stay with him, and I ask him a lot of questions, and I try to learn, even if I know that we'll never probably be able to have his level of competence. But I want to know a little bit what's happening, because what if he can't come? What if I'm stuck in the winter with a lot of snow, and I can't, and I need to repair the thing? How can I do it on my own? Maybe I can't, but certainly I'm trying to learn. So this ability, this mindset, always trying to learn as many things as possible. Again, it's what grandparents, or certainly great-grandparents, used to do, because they had to cut wood, they had to get the garden going, they had to repair their car, they had to be able to have all these skills. But I agree, specialization is important. Jack of all trades, master of none. It's true.
Mm. So what are some skills that people can start learning? Like they can log off this interview and they can get online or out of their house or whatever. Some useful skills that might get them started. If they're the kind of person who usually spend most of their time in front of a computer, for example, what should they be doing just to get the ball rolling on this?
So I'll give you three. First one, you have to go to something like is do some self-defense. Because doing self-defense, you start to reappropriate your body. First of all, you will see if you're fit or not fit. You will see if if you have a good stamina or not. So it will lead to other things, such as maybe I'll go to the gym now, or maybe I'll start running, or I'll start to get back into shape. But certainly, self-defense makes you aware of your body and what happens if someone attacks you. We're in societies where even physical touch is so taboo, is so far away, that we're not even used to someone grabbing us and maybe trying to hit us. let alone defending ourselves. We always say, well, the police should defend us. When the police comes, it's too late. So learn to defend and appropriate your body. It's a first thing. Second thing is learn to garden, and it may be just a simple pot. Tomorrow morning, you go to the gardening store and you buy a little pot. You put some earth inside and you start to grow some seeds and see what's happening. And you will see that stuff grows, and then eventually you can eat that stuff. That's magic. And people don't realize that this is how it works 100% of the times. People think that, well, fish and apples must grow in the supermarket. No, they don't. You need to fish them. You need to. So I'm probably exaggerating, because I'm sure that in Norway, where you are, people are still close to fishermen communities. But I believe me, in the big cities in the world, and that's where 60% of the people live, no one has a clue where food comes from. And even people in the food industry sometimes have no clue where it comes from, because the industry is so complex. So knowing that if you put a seed and you do certain things like a little bit of water here and there, not too much, not too less, suddenly you have tomatoes that grow, suddenly you have salad, suddenly you have something. It leads you again to some mind-changing processes that gets you to want to learn more skill sets. That's and the third thing is something that is about filtering water. Very simple stuff. It's really idiotically simple. What if tomorrow the water in your city doesn't work anymore? Where do you get water? And if you get it, how are you sure that it's clean and you can drink it? You don't know if the water from the pond has been polluted or contaminated by a rotting cat. I don't know. And certainly you cannot drink it that way. So learn the skill of cleaning that water. And there's many ways to do it. Of course, you can put it in a plastic bottle like that and put it in the sun, and the sun will clean the water. Or you can filter it, and probably you need to do both. And these skills are very, very basic and simple. This is something that you need maybe 5 minutes on the internet to find how you can clean and purify and filter your water. And then maybe you buy a filter, because it's much more safe than building your own. But certainly it's one of these little things. And again, I took 3 examples that are extremely basic. I'm not going to very complex things, because I could tell you, learn to repair your bicycle, learn to build, to manufacture something with wood. I don't know. But this is really very personal, and not everyone. For example, I'm not very skilled with my with wood. For example, if I have to build a table, you will be sure that it's not flat. But these skills are just 3 examples to get yourself moving and get yourself thinking about how you can get to something more complex and more elaborate.
Right, because it sounds like all of these 3. I mean, you were talking about self-defense, which is, especially if you're in a city, there's tons of places to learn how to do that. There are tons of different self-defense classes, clubs, or sports clubs you can join. People watching this probably have a friend or 2 that has done or does some martial arts and can give you some basic stuff. So that should be very easily accessible for people. All it takes is to set aside a little bit of time a week to work on that. I'm a martial artist myself, so I'm with you on that one. It's a very important skill to learn. And then you're talking about gardening, and you're saying, just get a pot, just get something simple that you can do at home. It'll take up very little time out of your day, but it will still be, a step in the right direction, and maybe even something that will motivate you to start doing more. I know a friend of mine started growing some kind of vegetable in a little pot. He had like one of them in his kitchen while we were in a flat, and I moved out. I came back a few months later, and his whole kitchen is just like covered in pots with different stuff that he and his girlfriend are using for food. And
It's better. It tastes better.
Yeah, and all this stuff, it's simple, it's available for everyone. If nothing else, it's a fun new hobby. It's something that'll make you feel a little bit good about yourself every day. You're doing something that's actually productive, and that might be new to you. And I don't know about you, but I always say, learning new skills is the best way to keep growing and keep pushing forward in your life instead of just stagnating.
Absolutely.
So what else should people have read? Like, what can people do that just to prepare something that you already said, it's not about stockpiling food in a closet somewhere and then sit around with your gun. But surely there must be some stuff, like water purification equipment, stuff like that. What should people have available to them in case, some earthquake or whatever happens that might affect their life? What kind of equipment should they get?
You're right to mention some natural disaster, because natural disasters, first of all, happen every minute in every country. And a natural disaster that happens quite common is, for example, your house burns. And for a country like probably in the size of Norway, there's probably a fire every 10 minutes. It's about 2 minutes in France or in England. So even things like that can be a disaster for one family, in one individual. So there's a lot of things that one can do in terms of personal insurance against the risk that life brings. And it can be aggression in the street. It can be a mugging like that. It can be indeed a small disaster like a fire. It can be a larger disaster. It can be an avalanche cutting the road, and you cannot you cannot get out of your valley. It can be in the city a problem with the sewers, a problem with the electricity, a problem with the water. So all of these exercises are relatively small scale, but have impact. Of course, this is not a long-term impact. It's a fairly short impact, but still, when normality that you're used to is not anymore what you expect, people start to go into what I call a crisis. And this crisis, if you're prepared, you will feel very safe. You will feel, okay, we have no electricity, but hey, I thought about having candles. I thought about having this little generator, or I don't care because I have a switch where I can put on my solar panels to power at least a little bit of the things I need to keep going. And this can go as far as preparing for, hey, I lost my job, doesn't matter because I have some cash at home. Things as very basic that old people used to do a long time ago. Now, of course, this can start with little things as we explained and give some simple examples. But once again, this is a trend. You go towards autonomy. And even if I said, the caricature, the people make fun of the storing food and having a gun, it doesn't necessarily mean that storing food and having a gun is a stupid thing. It's certainly something that I think everyone should have with responsibility and according to the law, obviously. But storing food is in case you're cut, your city or your town or your village is cut from because of the natural disaster. Well, you have some food to eat, and that's obviously something that people should do. Have 2 days, 3 days, 1 week of food. It's not taking a lot of space, and certainly is important. That trend of preparing yourself and starting to change your mindset in terms of how you feel with your body, yourself, others, relationships that become more meaningful with people around you, where you can build this autonomy, will lead you to be resilient and for any kind of, or at least as many kinds of disaster or problems that exist. And of course, I'm explaining here is exactly the reverse of what I'm telling in my book, in the sense that in my book I start with what I believe is going to be the mother of all problems and collapses, which is the collapse of the global economy. And I give the advice for people to start small and be good, even if it's a small disaster. But of course, the way you prepare is you start small, because you cannot make this huge battle plan and saying, on December 31st, there's going to be this massive meltdown in the stock markets, and then the cities will be cut because the supply chain system don't work. And that's how it works. It works with starting small, developing the skills, developing what is necessary to be prepared. And then, as I said, thinking for yourself. I always say to people, don't believe what I write or what I say. Think for yourself. Look around. Look at the environment. Is your environment safe? Yes. Better for you. And even if it's safe, do your martial arts, because it's something that makes you feel more alive. And then you can prepare other things which scale up. And maybe you become like me, obsessive about all those things that can happen. But certainly for most people, is simply rediscovering a life that is more close to what it means to be human, which is not having your phone every day or living in a box and working in a box and traveling in a box. My life is about your family, having healthy food, having the friends. But all of these things require skills that we are forgetting, we are losing because of the globalized, connected world. We need to rediscover that, and if only this is what I can achieve with my book to my readers, is to get people to this part of their lives, to rebuild what it means to be a human within a society, a community, as I said, a civilization.
That's very interesting. Now, where can people go to get your book if they want it?
Well, normally on Amazon, you have it all the time, Amazon.com, or certainly you can order it in a library or online. If you check Piero San Giorgio and Survive the Economic Collapse, you will find it quite easily. I also have a lot of videos on YouTube. Most are in French, some are in English, some in Italian and some other languages, but certainly some are in English. And but yeah, I hope they like my book. And if they do, contact me, tell me what you think. I like interaction with people. I like mutual learning and people telling me, well, you forgot this part, and I'd like to go why and understand more. Or people, you said you do martial arts, people who are more skilled than I am, to give me some advice and tips and share. I love that. Interaction with people is key and enables us to grow and learn.
That's perfect. So for all of you guys and girls watching this, start out small, start developing some of these skills that Piero's talking about, and some of the other skills that you yourself feel might be, necessary or useful. Start working on that stuff. Start looking in this direction, because if nothing else, it will give you some new knowledge, some new skills, and that's always a good thing. And if you do check out his website, his YouTube videos, or his book, get in touch with him, let him know what you think, because apparently he likes that kind of stuff, and so do we here at bringspark.com. So please get in touch with us as well if you have any thoughts or any questions or any guest ideas or whatever it might be. Piero, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks a lot. Ciao.